Welcome to episode 476 of Cinematary. I'm your host, Zach Dennis, and I'm here with
Grace Winburn
and Andrew Swafford.
And in today's episode, we're going to be continuing our Young Critics Watch Old Movies version 10 series with 1930s L'Age d'Or. And in part one, we're going to be talking about movies that we saw this week, as always. If you have a little programming note, if you've caught up with some, we've got some good. We just finished our Javier Bardem series. If you didn't catch up with that one, that didn't seem to really hit with people. I'll be honest, looking at the stats.
It didn't hit with us.
It didn't hit with me.
We had high hopes for Javier.
I only liked maybe one of the movies. But if you didn't, if you're catching us for this episode, go back. I thought we had a good discussion last week on The Phantom Carriage. So
we absolutely had a great discussion. I wasn't part of it, but I very much enjoyed listening to it.
Did you have anything to add to it?
Not really. I feel like you guys covered it super well.
Did you listen to the ambient album I sent you that goes along with the movie?
No, I need to.
I listened to it while watching the movie, and it goes hard.
Yeah, the music in the version I watched was pretty lackluster, I gotta say.
Yeah. Anyway.
By the way, while we're doing programming notes, are we able to announce the thing that's happening at the end of the series?
No, I need to go and strong arm them and get them like in the movie we're about to talk about, like to spill some blood and like get it finalized. But we're working on it.
Okay, there's a thing to announce.
There's a thing announcing. Yeah, there's a thing to announce that we're hoping to line up with our 1980s movie pick. But I want to make sure it's confirmed with them before we do it. I guess the tease is that we're possible live podcast, which would be the first one in a couple years.
Yeah.
Wow.
But we'll see if we can make it happen. Well, cool. Let's go ahead and jump into movies that we saw this week. We got a new release and we have an old release that honestly everybody should just go see also, because then they honestly kind of align.
I can see it.
They're close. They're close. The first one is Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. This is the first of the first Mad Max movies since 2016, 2015, 2016's Mad Max.
It's 2014. Hold on.
2014. One of those years. In
2015.
In some pre-Donald Trump year, we had Mad Max Fury Road. Pre-COVID time.
Whoa.
But yeah, this is the first Mad Max movie since then. George Miller is back. This one is a prequel, technically, of Fury Road, as this follows the origin story of Furiosa, who was the character in Fury Road played by Charlize Theron. In this one, she's played by Anya Taylor-Joy, but she is joined by Chris Hemsworth. All the boys from Fury Road, Morton Joe's
all the
back.
Boys you've loved before.
Yeah, Morton Joe's back. Erectus is back. He adds his brother Scrotus. My boy Organic Mechanic is there. We get an origin story about how our Organic Mechanic ended up with a Morton Joe. We get all that stuff here in this movie. But this one, it catches up. As the world fell, young Furiosa is snatched from the green place of many mothers and falls into the hands of a great biker horde led by the warlord Dementus. Sweeping through the wasteland, they come across the Citadel presided over by the Immortan Joe. While the two tyrants war for dominance, Furiosa must survive many trials as she puts together the means to find her way home. Yeah, I was thinking about this movie. I saw it last weekend. And I was thinking about just some of the reception. It's been kind of a mixed reception for it. But I was also like Fury Road is definitely one of the best action movies of the past 30 years, possibly in the ranking of all time.
I heard a video game critic, Jacob Geller, say that he thought it was the best action movie ever made, and that wasn't even controversial.
It's one of the greatest action movies ever made. So I was like thinking about it. I'm like, well, it's tough to match that, it's impossible to think that you're just going to immediately unless you just literally copy paste another one on there, which I think we would live with. But I don't think George Miller can live with himself. He has to do stuff a little bit differently.
Totally.
And so going in, like, I'd rewatched Fury Road a couple days before. I was like, this shit's amazing.
It really is.
Like, it just rips. It just rips. You just kind of, it was the first time I'd seen it in a couple years too. And it just starts going and you're just like, damn, this is so good.
It's great. Like, no matter what kind of attention you want to pay to it, if you want to think about like the world building and the lore, that's incredible. If you want to think about the thematics, like what the message of the movie and how it's saying it sort of non-verbally so often, that's amazing. If you want to look at like the stunt work and the physicality of the movie, the crazy action spectacle of it, that is obviously amazing. If you want to look at the cinematography and the direction of the movie, that is amazing. Even the writing, like, it's a movie with very few words, very few dialogue scenes, but every line is like a capital L line. It's just like top to bottom, a perfect movie.
It's difficult to not have a perfect movie where you have one of the vehicles is carrying a man who's just in with an electric guitar, just jamming the entire time, no matter what the situation is, just jamming on the guitar. He makes a cameo in this one. I was just like, it's that guy. But this one is definitely, that one is very interested in, like, it's like 90 minutes. It's like a full throttle train front and back, like it's
chase scene basically.
Yeah, it's like, well, it's like two chase scenes. It's like one chase scene the one end and then another chase scene back to the other end. Like, it's very, like, I agree with all you're saying. If you like wanted to boil it down, it's a very simple, like, basic premise, which is great, which is what is fantastic. This Furiosa has a lot more on its mind.
I disagree, but it does have a lot more going on. I will agree with that.
Well, I think that it's trying to reach into a bunch of other different areas rather than just being kind of an A to B plot type thing. Like,
sure, yeah.
Less that it has like stuff going on that necessarily lands. It just has a lot on its mind. It's a very busy mind. And I don't know. I'll be on the record saying that, like, I don't really give a shit about getting an origin story on every little minute detail. That's why, to this point, with a lot of like Star Wars stuff, like where I have to learn how the one guy in the club that one time met this one person, like, I don't give a fuck about that. Like,
don't you want to know how Han Solo got his jacket?
Yeah, like, I don't like that kind of stuff. Like, that kind of stuff. I don't care. Like, what works so well in Fury Road is you don't have a lot of information about any of this stuff. All you know is like their intention and like what they're trying to accomplish.
It's all implication. You can like kind of puzzle out in your brain how this woman Furiosa has kind of risen to the ranks of where she's at in this like uber patriarchal society. But that movie does not show you any of that. Doesn't explain itself ever. Like, it is acting as though like every character doesn't need any of this shit explained to them because they're just living their lives. Why would
you understand it. Like, but you don't need to go back. You understand it. Like, you get it. And so like that's the kind of thing that holds me back a lot with this movie is it's not Solo, a Star Wars story. It's not that, which I'm glad I've forgotten every part of, but I remember
the worst case scenario of what this
but it feels at times very like, this is how this person ended up here. This is how this person ended up here. This is how Furiosa got this. I found myself
her arm.
Yeah, I found myself near the end of the movie. I'm like, this girl's got 2 arms. She's losing one of them. So when's it happening?
Yeah.
And so I think I feel like Anya Taylor-Joy's, like, she does a good job. Chris Hemsworth, kind of the MVP of this movie. He's doing.
I agree. Chris Hemsworth is like, every time Chris Hemsworth is not on screen, I'm wondering when Chris Hemsworth is coming back.
Yeah, like the dude is like unchained from Marvel and is just like reveling. He's having a hell of a time. But I don't care about every little, like, this movie is best. I think the best character in this is the Tom Burke character, who's kind of like the driver of the war rig. Who you
think he is the best character in this movie?
I think he's
I think he is in the running for the worst character in this movie.
Well, I just like him because it's just like whenever he shows up, it becomes just like pure action. You know, it's not
Sure, yeah.
it's not we're hanging out in like the Morton Joe place. We're not hanging out in Chris Hemsworth place, even though that's kind of fun. Like it's just like we're gonna see the war rig go forward and like there's gonna be action.
Sure.
And you never get like too many unfeathered just like action sequences. It's a lot of action and then kind of like bebopping around talking to people and then action and then bebopping around like explain and like it just kind of it's so stop and startish that I just kind of it tired me out after a while just because I was just like I just want you to go, like just shut the hell up and go.
There's like 2 or 3 big action set pieces depending on
and they're great
count it, and they are really good, especially the first big one. But yeah, it's also like structured in a weird way. Instead of being set in like the span of about 24 hours, which is how long Fury Road spans, this is set over decades, and it's split into all these parts with chapter breaks that have strange kind of cryptic titles. And there's like, time jumps. There's an actor swap. They actually do some like AI stuff, I think, to slowly put Anya Taylor-Joy's face on the little kid. I gotta say, I think that the kid upstages Anya Taylor-Joy a little bit.
The kid's really good.
I found that kid way more of a compelling screen presence than Anya Taylor-Joy. I don't feel like she brings all that much to this role, to be honest.
No, I don't think it's her best. Like the kid, I was not expecting as much of the kid as we got. We got a lot
like
of
an hour.
This is, and that's the other thing. This movie's 2.5 hours, which is kind of frustrating. And so like an hour and a half or so is like kid. And then like, honestly, Anya Taylor-Joy's, I feel like in this movie for an hour.
Right.
Like the first hour of this movie, that's why you like Chris Hemsworth so much, because it's all just him at the beginning and he's just going.
And I felt like the stuff with the kid was the only part of the movie where I genuinely didn't know what was going to happen. Like this movie opens, as many Mad Max movies do, like completely untethered from the rest of the chronology. I know there's a character named Furiosa, but it's telling a totally different story about her getting kidnapped and her mom kind of stealing motorcycles and going off to rescue her. That is, I think, maybe the strongest bit of the movie for me. And then you get this long stretch of time where the kid is basically being held prisoner by Chris Hemsworth and his like mercenary band of bikers. And you're just like seeing her witness the shit that these guys get up to. And the shit that these guys get up to is like really interesting and unique in the way that kind of like the anthropological side of Fury Road was. Like so much of the like pleasure of that movie is just like watching this very strange culture and trying to figure out how they work. And I think
he's really fun because like he knows all these big words, but he's also kind of a dumbass. And so like
a historian on staff.
Well, no, it's not a historian. It's the history man.
The history man. Yeah. Who's also kind of the narrator of the movie. He has a little opening monologue, but I love the history man. One of my favorite characters easily. Love him like defining words for Chris Hemsworth and then Chris Hemsworth not knowing the words that were in the definition and needing those defined too. But yeah, once we jump into the future and it's Anya Taylor-Joy as Furiosa, it's kind of just doing the Han Solo thing of like, let's see how this person got their job. Let's see how she lost her arm. We do kind of go to some places that in the original Fury Road, you're very like tantalized by the fact that you don't get to go there. Like you don't get to go to Gastown. You don't get to go to the Bullet Farm. The Citadel, where Morton Joe lives and reigns, is so interesting and like strange and unique that you think that, the rest of this like ecosystem / political economy has got to be equally interesting. And so I was really stoked to hear that there was going to be like actual scenes taking place in those locations. But there's not really a lot to it.
I wish you got to explore it a little bit more. You have like a brief scene where, because you have like up in the cliffs where like Immortan Joe and his folks are, and then you have like on the ground level the like the kind of like poor, like the poorest of poor who are just kind of there looking for scraps of water and such. And you spend a little bit of time down there.
That's just cool. I wish we had more time in there.
Yeah, but you don't really get to explore the Citadel as much, and you just don't like. She's allegedly like moving up the ranks, but like it feels so like you don't really feel that tangibly. It's just kind of like, yep, she's going up the ranks, and we're kind of told that. But
there's also never any sort of like engagement with her gender and how that like affects her ability to rise up the ranks. She disguises herself as a boy for a little while, but eventually that disguise falls away. And we just don't talk about that. Well, it doesn't really happen in this
I guess it's implied that she, survived the giant war rig attack sequence, like that kind of. But again, it's never really engaged with. It's just kind of, it's like, she's going to be at the top of the pile because of Fury Road. That's where she is, So I don't I can't totally hate this thing because George Miller is a wild man, and he sure has some visions, even if they don't always land. And in the action sequence you get in this is 50 times better than you're going to get in your average Hollywood movie. Like this is going to be better than Godzilla X Kong or whatever the hell that was, and things like that. Like this is awesome. But it's just kind of, it's tough because I think you kind of come into it with such astronomical expectations. I'll be curious. I know I'll rewatch it at some point. I'll be curious what a rewatch does when you kind of have a better sense of when you're looking at the movie as this movie rather than you're looking at it as a follow-up to Fury Road.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of my main gripe with it. As I don't feel like it has its own identity. It's so tethered to Fury Road. Almost everything in here, just kind of seeks to explain how something in Fury Road got to where it was, and it just kind of feels like a pale imitation of Fury Road. It sort of demystifies that movie in a way that I'm not going to say takes away from it. I think you can still go back and rewatch Fury Road to your heart's content and be amazed and dazzled by it in the way that you kind of can't help but be. But I just don't think that many of the things that got explained here needed to be explained here. And I wish this movie was completely doing its own thing. Like all three of the Mad Max movies preceding Fury Road are very different from one another. And I wish this was even more different from Fury Road. And you have some really great action set pieces. I would be surprised if we didn't get that. But, at the end of this movie, it ends with like a little clip show of some of the best parts of Fury Road.
It does.
And
I was like, I want to go watch Fury Road now.
Man, I wish I was watching Fury Road instead of this. Like, I don't think that the action sequences here like top anything that we see in Fury Road. Why try? Why like give them so much focus?
I did like my favorite action sequence was when they're driving the war rig for the first time to I forgot where they're going. It doesn't matter, and they get attacked by like the offset of Chris Hemsworth, the whatever I forgot, Octo Knight or whatever with the black horns and stuff like, and they get attacked. And you have like the parasailing people and stuff like that. It's awesome. It's great. You have like the war boys and that was the other thing is you have the war boys in this, and like rewatching Fury Road, Nicholas Hoult kind of his performance. It's not nearly like the top performance, but it's like a very nice like middle ground performance in that to just kind of offer something different. And the war boys in this just have absolutely no personality. They're just
none of them are characters. They're just a mass of war boys.
And
it feels like in Fury Road, like even the really small characters have some sort of unique personality to them. Like Nicholas Holt's character Nux is a great example, but also like Nux's brother, who like doesn't get to go on the journey that Nux goes on, but is really stoked that he has Mad Max's boot. And he thinks that like that's going to give him some sort of clout that's going to help him climb this hierarchy that he's living in. And you can really get a sense of like the personality differences between these two war boys. And I feel like you don't get a whole lot of that in Furiosa. Like going back to Tom Burke's character, who is this guy? He is a guy. It's like, what if there was a guy? He's just a guy who drives the war rig, and he's not a total monster. So Furiosa kind of falls in love with him, ? That's really underexplored, underdeveloped.
I didn't need her to fall in love with him. I just
want
like this is your friend who you drive your cool war rig with. Like that's all you need.
Do road war together.
Yeah, and honestly, do more of that because that's fun. I don't need him reflecting on what his parents did and how he needs to like redeem them. I don't care.
Did he reflect on what his parents did? I don't remember that at all.
Yeah, they had some whole scene, and I was just like, just drive the war rig.
Man,
come on. I don't know. At the same time, it's I call it the Star Warsification. We have to explain the origin story. Like, why? Let me ask this to the masses: why do you need to know every single detail about every little thing? Who cares half the time? Like, why do I care about this?
To not know and to wonder about.
It's way better. It's so much better. I don't need to know about this little oddball you run into on this one planet. Like, let the little oddball live. Like, I don't need to know their story.
It's for the people without imagination, so that it's all told to them, so they can't wonder, they can't make it up themselves. It's for them.
Yeah, but they just shouldn't be allowed. Is what my solution to that is. They shouldn't be allowed. Or you don't even have to have imagination. Just be like cool, nice. That person,
nice. The Doof Warrior. That guy's cool.
Yeah, I came to that understanding while watching Game of Thrones. I can't name you one damn character in that. It's like it's that dude, it's that lady, it's this monster. Like whatever. Like I know what their deal is. Like let's just know what their deal is and watch the movie.
I honestly wish this was way more like Game of Thrones. I wish it was like palace intrigue of seeing Furiosa kind of like climb her way to the top. But instead it's just like, she fought real good one time.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. I like Anya Taylor-Joy, but I feel like a little bit she's just kind of like coasting in some of these roles. Like I'll be curious to see, because she's supposed to be in the next Dune movie, because she's previewed in the second movie.
She plays a very interesting character.
I'll be curious to see how. Like, I like her a lot, but I think she's been getting in some of these movies, and it's just kind of like she didn't really do much in it. She just kind of is there. And this is more like the kind of like big movies, not like some of her like more like middle road movies that she's also done at the same time. But
she's definitely switched lanes. She's not doing a movie like Thoroughbreds.
I guess unless Robert Eggers calls, because she's going to be in his Nosferatu.
She's going to be in Nosferatu. I know that she'll give us a good Robert Eggers.
When Robbie Eggers calls, she's like Witch, Northman, Nosferatu. I'm there.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Furiosa, it's in theaters now. I mean, looking at the slate of movies we have right now, like, what are you gonna like? If you're looking like, I want to go to the movies, go see Furiosa. What are you gonna see? Garfield with Chris Pratt?
Didn't Garfield beat Furiosa in the ratings?
It probably did. I
know that Furiosa has tanked in terms
it hasn't done
how much money it costs to make.
Which kills me, because I'm like, I really want like just a like Tom Hardy Mad Max thing again. Like I want another one of those, and I'm like, I swear to God, if this tanked it because we had to do a origin story.
Well, apparently there is another one coming out. I heard that there's like a couple of like graphic novels or something, and one of them is about Furiosa's backstory, and one of them is about Immortan Joe's backstory. I really hope we don't get an Immortan Joe movie.
Why did we just have a movie? Like, why did we just read the graphic novel then? Why did we have to? Whatever, man. It's fine. Furiosa, it's in theaters now. Let's talk about a way better movie and toss it over to Grace.
Sure. So I watched Stagecoach, John Ford's Stagecoach from
the Mad Max of the 1930s.
Honestly, the Road Warriors. So this was on my list for Young Critics Watch. This was my pick for the 30s. I find Westerns to be a blind spot in my film history. So anything I can do to fill that in, which is why, of course, you guys do this Young Critics Watch series. Also, I have this knack for picking out movies that you guys have already done. But this is the last Young Critics Watch. So, from the 1st to the 10th, maybe we could look at this as more of a retrospective on Stagecoach. So if you guys remember...
You said that, and we told you. I looked it up. Episode 48 is when we talked about Stagecoach. We're on episode 476. You're good to go.
We're good to go.
I remember the part when John Wayne spins his gun around.
Wow. And what an entrance. So I could start there. Absolutely. Like, Ford knows how to introduce a movie star. And so I have here, for those that are watching on our YouTube, I have my John Wayne cut out. He's relaxing against the wall behind me. And honestly, he's larger than life. And I get it.
He's doing a little pelvic thrust.
It's the way that it's the cardboard. He can't help it. Like
he got excited after watching La Age d'Or, and he's just feeling it,
Yeah, I mean, he's just really, he's crowding me, I'll say. But I just wanted to have him here for some emotional support and to give the Duke his flowers. So for Westerns, I've seen The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. I've seen The Searchers. So I've seen his big 2, but now I guess this is his big 3 with Stagecoach. So at this point, I was reading, and it seemed as though Westerns were sort of starting to fall. This attitude or mentality of if you've seen one, you've seen them all. So how do you make something that stands out from all the other Westerns that have come before it? You make it more of a character study. This movie follows 9 characters who seemingly have never met each other, have no real connection to each other, but it's all about how this event that they're living through, which is an Apache attack led by Chief Geronimo, as the Apaches essentially chase them across the Arizona desert. It's man versus wild. It's man versus man versus Native American. And this is also like hugely patriotic, of course. There's this like rallying cry of rah, rah, USA. USA always wins against the bad guys. And who are the bad guys? The Native Americans. So then there's also this glaring racism that is really hard to overlook with our 2024 eyes. So it's... But all of that aside, this still just thrilled me. I was hooting and hollering. I was also swooning. Oh my God, John Wayne looked amazing. He's so attractive in this, and he's just so well lit. I like the eye that Ford has for like lighting and contrast. There's a lot of shadows in this, and how do you light the desert? Where's the light come from? And especially with the lantern light, how that all casts shadows and
in black and white.
And it's in black and white. I mean, what is it? My friend Janine said that color film should have never been invented because black and white is just so much prettier. It's just so much nicer to look at. But watching these characters, we have a drunk, a coward, a thief, a dandy, a uppity society woman, a whore with a heart of gold, and an outlaw, Ringo the Kid.
This was 2024. We would have origin story movies of all those characters.
And I'd probably watch. I don't know.
How did the drunk become a drunk?
Well, this does a really great job for those with no imagination, as I said earlier with Furiosa, of giving just little bits of everyone's background, and it's just sprinkled throughout. For example, the drunk, Doc Boone, he's the town doctor, but he doesn't have a steady hand, of course, because he has to drink. He makes note of how he was honorably discharged from the Union Army after the War of the Rebellion. And then there's another character, this dandy, this gambler, this rounder, who sits up straight and says, "No, sir, that's the War of Southern Confederacy." So immediately, like, we see that conflict. The social hierarchy is established within this small stagecoach, this tiny little community, and there's some tension there. But that's two characters whose background is just handed to us on a silver platter through conversation, casual conversation, not through just meandering origin stories.
Well, you also have like such. I'm looking again. Like you mentioned, Doc Boone. That's Thomas Mitchell. Great fucking actor. He's such a good actor. You have like Andy Devine as Buck. You have John Carradine. You have John Carradine in this. Like, you just have good actors. Like, they're all really good at doing exactly that. Of going, hey, this is my one line of personality, but I'm going to make you feel for me.
But they deliver so well. I mean, this is Hollywood studio system in the 30s. It's a star-making machine. It's fabulous. Mm-hmm. I really loved every second of it. The big push for me was the romance. I was swooning. As Claire Trevor, she's the whore with the heart of gold, and she's treated with some shred of kindness and decency from an outlaw. You know, he's supposed to be the bad guy, and he stands up for her at every turn. That was very romantic. That was very heroic, very chivalric. And it, you know, let me drop in that $5 word. It was very
Chris Hemsworth here.
It was, well, I know what I'm talking about, but it was very charming in that, and it held up, and it held up very well to me. That romance didn't feel shoehorned in. It felt very organic to watch these characters grow as the forces around them force them to grow. There is the one character, John Carradine, who does not grow. I mean, he's the dandy. There's this moment of weakness, this moment of cowardice, and he suffers for it. This movie also takes a fabulous turn. It's funny and romantic and a Western, but then the violence, it changes on a dime, and suddenly it's a gory, bloody shootout as the Apaches attack the stagecoach. They make it miraculously with the help of the cavalry. The rallying cry of the bugle announces the headfirst charge of the soldiers. And I was kind of pumping my fist. I was like, yeah, okay, they're going to be okay. Of course they would be. The movie would be over if they all died in the shootout, and that might be a little bit of a letdown.
Yeah, you got Yakima Canutt in this also. He's crawling under the horse and stuff.
The stunts in this are unbelievable. The jumping from horse to catch the reins. At the very end, the shootout where John Wayne dives to, win, to shoot against that Clemens boy, his nemesis. And it's so interesting. It all ends there. Like, that's that moment of justice, that eye for eye. It ends there. And then the two outcasts who have found community with each other, Dallas and Ringo, they get to ride off into the sunset, and they get to have their happily ever after, which is that's how I want it to end. I don't want anything bad to happen to them anymore. Let them be happy and let them be in love. They are each other's home, and they look out for each other in a way that nobody else in this society would. And it's very endearing. And, I'm a sucker. I'm a sentimental sucker and a sap. And I like a romance in my Western, a little bit of Western with my romance, I should say.
Yeah. Amazing movie. I've seen multiple times since episode 48 where we talked about it. I don't remember a thing we said that episode.
I'll definitely be watching this again. This is totally like Western with a W. There's all these newer takes on Westerns that we get. Like, I always think, like, most recently, well, not most recently, but I mean, Furiosa, Mad Max, isn't that a Western? And then Logan, that's a Western. And this like neo-Western, it has all the trappings of, man versus nature, this unforgiving, inhospitable land. And
what's the last straightforward Western we've gotten in theaters?
Hateful Eight, or Magnificent Seven. I don't know.
I guess there was the Magnificent Seven remake.
Yeah.
I think you probably find them a little bit more on like TV and things like that. Like
Bonanza.
Bonanza. No,
this
like
is,
that.
It's so recognizable. It's iconic and definitely worth the watch. It's like, how do you pick out from just this sea of westerns a single drop in the bucket?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I would say like it's not historically like set in a period where you would call it a straight western, but something like Hell or High Water with Chris Pine and Ben Foster is like a straight western.
Yeah, that's a great one.
It's a good movie. Yeah, this one is good. You know, it's that's why I'm glad we talked about Stagecoach with a Mad Max movie, because I think people brought up Stagecoach a lot with Fury Road. It's a very like A to B plot movie. Like there's not a lot like if you kind of narrow it down, it's very like we're just trying to get from point A to point B with action happening in between. And it's a very similarly structured movie where you get a little bit of character, then it's action, then you get like they stop, you get more character, and then it's action. And it has that long sequence at the end of it. I don't know. I don't know why. I'll be honest. I don't know why we don't realize that this is all we want in a movie, especially an action movie. I just want A to B. There's action in between. Like why do we have to complicate things? That's my
reinvent the wheel, I guess.
Yeah, it's just like, no, I know it better. No, you don't. John Ford figured it out in 1930. Like, just shut the fuck up. just make a good action movie.
Well, they don't make any more John Waynes. Do we have another like smoldering star?
I think
man, are there any real men anymore?
I think Chris Pratt.
They don't make them like this anymore.
Chris Pratt's pretty Republican. I mean, he might fit.
Oh.
That's definitely what he's going
fold
for.
Up? Can I, does he fold up and travel well? Like
he can go in a warp pipe.
He folds, yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't know. We don't really, to be honest. Well, I do like me some Glenn Powell. Like honestly, give me some. Like I'm excited for Glenn Powell and Twisters. Like hell yeah.
Also, his movie with Linklaters coming out in just a couple of days on Netflix, right?
Yeah, like Glenn Powell's pretty. Like just toss him in a nice action movie like this. Like he would be great in state. Like Glenn Powell could pull off the like flipping the gun type thing. That's my thought.
Austin Butler.
Chris Pratt could not. Austin Butler might.
Give him a couple more years.
Austin Butler's got to like do some normal stuff. He's been kind of weird lately. Just just be a normal person a couple times, Austin. Like you don't.
No, I want him to have another accent. I want him to talk in that like choppy drawl. That
I am excited for the movie. The biker movie he's doing that Jeff Nichols is directing, and it's him and Tom Hardy. Tom
Hardy's doing a really weird voice in that movie. He sounds like
that's what he does.
James Dean or something.
I saw somebody tweet today that it's funny they were like, it's funny that Tom Hardy like could have been like the action star of the generation, and he selected Venom as the franchise where he gets to do not one but two strange accents in it.
He just wants to do voices.
The dude just wants to do voices. I love it. All right, we're gonna take a short break, and then we're gonna try to talk about L'Age d'Or, which I'm not even gonna preface with any like hints. It's a trip. After this break. And we're back with part 2 of episode 476 of Cinematary. in this part, we're going to be talking about 1930s L'Age d'Or, which was directed by Louis Buñuel from a script by Buñuel, Salvador Dali, and Marquis de Sade. The film stars... Yeah, they needed 3 people to write this. The film stars Gaston Modot and Leah Lace. A surrealist tale of a man and woman who are passionately in love with one another, but their attempts to consummate their love are thwarted by their families, the church, and the bourgeois society. Haven't we all dealt with that? We're just trying to be in love, but families, the church, and bourgeois society gets in the way.
I don't know if love is what I would call what's happening in this movie.
whatever let those kids have fun. The film was made upon the request and financed by Charles and Marie Laure de Noëls. We're getting in French words, guys. I'm sorry. An aristocratic Jewish couple captivated by the previous film by Louis Buñuel and Salvador Dali, Un Chien Andalou, or The Andalusian Dog, from 1929. At its premiere in 1930, before around 30 of friends and family of the financiers, the film was only timidly and politely received. Its first public screening a few months later didn't convince the audience. The real scandal erupted when the film was shown at Studio 28, the famous Montmartre movie theater. Members of extreme right movements disrupted one of the screenings, in particular going so far as to deface the surrealist artwork displayed in the theater's lobby. The movie's reception would spread even to the Italian embassy, which notified the French foreign minister of its dissatisfaction with the film's presentation. Religious leaders, the media, and politicians fervently protested the film. Showing the film was banned in December of 1930 by the Paris prefect of police, despite being defended by the surrealists, notably by the famous author André Breton. It would remain censored for 51 years until 1981, when its original negative was restored by the Pompidou Center. A contemporary right-wing Spanish newspaper published a condemnation of the film and of Buñuel and Dali, which described the content of the film as, quote, the most repulsive corruption of our age, the new poison which Judaism, Masonry, and rabid revolutionary sectarianism want to use in order to corrupt the people, which honestly is a banger pull quote.
Masonry.
In response, the family withdrew the film from commercial distribution and public exhibition for more than 40 years. Nonetheless, 3 years later, in 1933, the film was privately exhibited at the Museum of Modern Art in New York City. And then 49 years later, from November 1st through 15th in 1978, the film had its legal U.S. premiere at the Roxy Cinema in San Francisco. A neophyte cineast, Buñuel overcame his ignorance of cinematic production technique by sequentially filming most of the screenplay. The 63-minute film is composed of almost every meter of film exposed and dramatic sequence photographed. L'Age d'Or began as the second artistic collaboration between Buñuel and Salvador Dali, who had fallen out by the time of the film's production. Dali was serious when he said, quote, Christ was an amateur when it came to creating a religion. The painter had decided to invent his own religion in the 1930s. He told writer and journalist Alain Bosquet about it in an interview and mentioned it briefly in his memoir, Diary of a Genius. The letter from Dali to Breton in 1935 presents Dali's idea and offers some insights into why the artist was expelled from the Surrealists in 1939. Breton kept the letter as evidence against him. In the letter, Dali writes, quote, I believe more and more that we surrealists are turning into priests. It is an idea that has been haunting me for a long time now. So much so that one of my urgent projects is to invent a religion, since there can be no priest without religion. It is an essentially anti-Christian and materialistic religion based on the progress of specific sciences. In other words, a godless and scientific religion.
Did you say Dali was ousted from the Surrealists?
Yeah, he kind of got into some stuff with like Franco, like he was kind of pro Franco.
Oh,
and started dabbling with Hitler and Mussolini and stuff.
Just
and so,
dabbling.
Yeah, and so they were just
dabble with Hitler.
So like by 1939, they were like, I think you need to leave.
Good for them.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to represent dreams in visual art anymore.
All right, let's start L'Age d'Or. Who has had any of y'all seen this before?
No.
Not at all.
I've seen quite a bit of Buñuel, but I've not seen his first movie.
I've seen none. This was a shock. This was great.
Yeah, did you know anything going in?
Not at all. I didn't know a darn thing. And as I started watching it, I kept trying to hold on to some sort of narrative. and then I just like let go and I just sat on my hands and just let it wash over me. This isn't one that you can like critique or analyze. It's just like more, it's interpretation. So it's all up to interpretation, like everything. Yeah. So it's how you interpret it. And it sounds like people interpreted it pretty poorly and they took it personally and threw a little fit about it with these riots.
Well, yeah.
Well, also, can you imagine going into this movie as a 1930s?
Yeah, like
no, I can't. Like, it's not so exciting.
Like you watch it now and
I'm
just you watch it now and like a lot of like, well, even just them like lying on each other like on the little like beach thing. You're just like now you're like, yeah, whatever. But you're like, yeah, in like 1930, there's just a giant group of people and then two people trying to have sex. In the middle of that.
Sounds like you belong to the bourgeoisie society that is keeping them apart. I say, let them.
No, let them. But if I'm in like 1930, I'm like, whoa. All I've seen up to this point is a train coming into the station and Melius doing some fun tricks. Now, what the hell is coming across the screen?
The Jews must be responsible for this.
Yeah.
Guys.
That's what the guy said.
That's what they said.
I'm not saying anything disparaging about the Jews.
That's what Dolly said when he was dabbling with Hitler.
No, that's
probably what Dolly said.
That's probably what Dolly said.
Yeah, no, the guy, what the person who said that it was the most repulsive corruption of our age, the new poison which Judaism, Masonry, and rabid revolutionary sectarianism want to use in order to corrupt the people.
The Jews and the Masons want people sucking each other's toes.
Mm-hmm.
That was romantic. You know, I'm fans.
So trying to kind of like give at least a bit of a path for people who haven't seen this, which you should
try to like summarize it.
Well, so it starts out with like this brief documentary about scorpions.
Yes, I was so excited to talk about the scorpion part.
Yeah, you have a brief documentary. It's just a brief one about scorpions. And then that opens into a series of like vignettes, which are like kind of like there's a point that connects each point from like 1 to 2.
Well, but
overall they're not connected.
And the next scene, it just says sometime later.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden there's like a guy on the edge of like a seaside cliff looking at a bunch of like inexplicable clergymen just like hanging out.
Well, see, I thought that they were doing. I thought that because the scorpion kills the rat in the documentary, and so I thought the clergymen were like serving the rites to the rat, which cracked me up.
That would be funny.
Which I found to be really that's what I assumed. But yeah, it's like so. Then after that, you have like the central characters of this man and this woman who all they want to do is have sex.
So is the woman who is having sex with a dude in the mud the same woman that we see in like the last half of this movie?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's
you don't really get a good look at her.
They break up after they have to be broken apart in the mud when they're having sex, and then they're like, go your separate ways. Because remember, like she goes somewhere and they like are walking around with him, and then he like punches the blind guy and takes his car. You know that part.
We're skipping over some important detail here.
There's something about there seems to be some sort of war that has like left some soldiers just completely exhausted, and they climb a mountain. Then these Mallorcans come over on some ships. This is so fun. Like we're getting everybody's different interpretations.
There's an absurd number of people who get off these ships. It doesn't make any sense how they all.
I guess that's the invasion. I mean, it felt very invasive and then like sort of colonizing because some figures look like just regular people. Some have some sort of a uniform, so it's like society coming over. And then as society is coming over, they stand in front of this square, and that to me just read immediately like Plymouth, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then they have a quick fan cam for Rome.
Yes, and
they're just like Rome.
Oh, they refer to it as
the Vatican.
What is the line? I wrote it down. Imperial Rome referred to as the mistress of the pagan world, turned secular seat of the church.
Great line. Yeah,
but before what you just described, Zach, with like the guy kicking a blind dude and stealing his taxi.
Great.
He's being escorted down the street by these two police officers? Question mark.
Yeah, they parade him.
Little unclear, but he keeps stopping and noticing advertising that has some sexual suggestiveness to it, which I think we're meant to view as kind of ironic or hypocritical. That the amount of sex that is kind of allowed in public, or sexual expression that is allowed in public, is effectively zero, but it's kind of being used all the time in more subliminal ways to manipulate people's buying habits. Mm-hmm. And also there's a moment where he stops and sees, I think, a picture of that woman, and it's like we're in Super Mario 64, like we're all of a sudden we're in that woman's space. And is this when we see the cow, or is that later?
Yeah, I think this
we see the cow.
Yeah,
she goes and she talks to her mother. Mm-hmm. She's taped up her finger. I mean, the guy seeing all these images, everything reminds him of her, right? Mm-hmm. Like,
at some point in the middle of this, also he starts playing soccer with a violin.
Or was that him? I thought there was just some other random guy.
Maybe it was somebody else. Somebody plays soccer with a violin.
I interpreted that to mean like this bourgeois culture that Buñuel and Dali are critiquing has no respect for art.
Absolutely.
Whatsoever, right?
I saw that through line throughout. When this, I think there's another man that walks through some sort of garden, and there's like a statue. I had to rewind that back because as he's walking through the statue garden, I didn't notice that there was a rock on the statue's head, but I noticed the rock on his head. So I was like, oh, it's like you're stunting your growth. You're not inspired by this art. And then when I backed up, I saw that the statue was to a figure similarly with a rock on his head, that like that's what's idolized in this culture, is this stunted, shortened growth and small mind. So that art is mirrored in that society, but actual art like music and painting is something that they have contempt for, or something that they possess, but they don't, but they're not moved by.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me that they're implying that art is kind of inherently kind of radical, like it kind of like stretches the bounds of the human imagination, as it allows us to express the things that are not expressible in polite conversation. And so of course this culture has no respect for art. It serves as a threat, right?
Two are together. Yeah, the two are linked. Yeah.
Buñuel and Dali would have really enjoyed Instagram influencing.
In what way? Say more about that.
I feel like the rock on the head is like an Instagram influencer. And they're just like, no, I want creativity and art. I don't want you to just tell me that this tapas place is the best tapas place you've ever been to.
To circle back to plot things, when he's being, I keep trying to bring up this hilarious detail. When he's being taken down the street by these policemen, he stops and convinces them that he's actually not a bad guy, because the International Goodwill Society has like written him this letter explaining that he is a good guy. And then he immediately just like kicks in the chest this blind dude and steals his taxi.
It's his diplomatic immunity.
Yeah.
Some piece of paper dictates that he can do no wrong.
So
these words have no meaning. It's
somewhat hard for me to view this as like, this guy has these artistic and sexual desires that he should be able to express, and it's just bad society that's holding him back, because he is bad too, right? He's not a good person.
What, the guy who a few scenes later shoots somebody? Yeah, I don't think he's a.
Is he also the guy who shoots a child, or is that?
No, I thought that was someone different. I thought that was a different vignette to just discuss. Like,
I knew he was going to shoot the child too. I was like he had the gun, and then kid knocked the thing down. I'm like, he's going to shoot this damn kid.
That's very
he's going to shoot this. then he killed the kid. I was like, I knew it.
And all the fancy people inside having their party, like they walk to the window and they look at the shot child. They just they go back to partying.
Yeah.
Wasn't that terrible? Wasn't that so sad? Didn't that make you feel bad?
Yeah.
They'll comment on what's happening outside their own windows, but what's happening inside their house is a fire, and
oh my god,
maid is dead. And
that was maybe the part that made me laugh the hardest is when there's like this burst of flame comes from another room, and then like people just kind of like shuffle 5 feet to the left.
I don't know. The drop kicking the blind person really got me. I'll be honest.
That was good.
That gave me a good laugh.
And the cow. We kind of skimmed over the cow.
The cow's pretty great.
When we get this little, interstitial moment of the woman, as she's credited on Letterboxd, in her own space, she talks to her mom, like Grace said, but then she goes into her bedroom and there's just like a cow sitting in her bed. That she like shoos away.
That has a little like hat and stuff on.
I have no idea what to make of this.
You don't have a cow. I really want to say that.
Yeah. No, there's just
like some taboo thing in her bed. Like, I mean, if we just keep going, like
there you go. I can see it. Yeah.
I don't know. It's just naturally just funny to have her talking to the cow and be like, no, go get out of here, cow. What are you doing?
Do you feel like that's happened before? Like, not again.
No, cow, get out of here.
Not this time, not tonight.
I'll be honest, I didn't come up with a very like intelligent reading of that. I just found it entertaining that she was shooing the cow out of the room.
Yeah.
I was like, that's just funny. That's a good bit.
Yeah, I think surrealism, invites interpretation because everything kind of feels like it has to be a symbol for something, but you also don't need to interpret all of it, right? Like, it is inherently somewhat free associative in the way that dreams are free associative, and so I don't think there's always necessarily meaning to be made, or it's kind of up to you what you think is worth making meaning out of.
Yeah, I went through this movie with real dumb guy energy, just kind of chuckling along the way at the different, like when they shoot the kid, I was just like Jesus.
Zach, you're always talking about how you want movies to make less sense. And this was a great example.
So we went from a scorpion documentary to what I assumed were clergymen performing the last rites on the rat that the scorpion killed, and I was like, hell yeah, I'm locked in on this. I'm like, this is stupid. Hell yeah. Yeah, no, I just kind of went along with just like what's going on here and what silly predicament are they going to get into next? Right. Because after they shoot the kid and ignore that, and then a fire breaks out and they ignore that, then the man who's wanting to have sex with the woman whose family is throwing the party, he shows up at the party, and he's like trying to talk to the family about something.
He's cornered by the mom. He's like on his way to the woman, and then the mom corners him, and he has to talk to her.
And she spills some wine on him, and
he
slaps her.
Slaps the shit out of her. It's like, jeez. And that's what sets them off.
Yeah.
Out of the three events, the shooting the kid, the fire in the kitchen, the slapping the matriarch of this rich family is what sets off the party.
Right. Because what we actually care about is like politeness and also hierarchy, right? Yeah. Like if it was maybe the lady of the house who died in this house fire, we might not have had such a blasé reaction to it, but it's the help, so who gives a shit?
Yeah.
So that happened.
The whole party's really great. I like like all that party. Yeah, and then it shifts into they're performing like the kind of the music performance.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever actually see the instrumentalists playing the music? I feel like you see the conductor a lot.
See the conductor, yeah. But at the same time, while this is happening, the man and the woman are trying to get it on in the garden.
Which made me think, like, were hedge mazes just like really expensive ways for rich people to go make out in public?
I mean, I respect
Go
that.
for a
Honestly.
walk. Let's go. Come with me this way. No. I could have sworn it was this way.
Yeah. Oh no,
No.
we're stuck. What do we do?
We're lost. What are we gonna do? You want to just
What do
like
we
make out
do?
or something? Oh, just coming up with ideas over here.
Just spitballing.
And that's where I feel like the image that's shared a lot outside of just the cow in the bed of this movie is her what I think is the first recorded foot fetish on screen. Yeah, Quentin Tarantino probably has this movie way up in his listings. Like she starts licking that statue's foot.
Well, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. Before we get there, several things happen, right? Like
they
start.
They do suck on each other's hands.
They start there. Like we do not start with kissing.
Number one.
Sticking fingers
First base.
in mouths.
Well, first they like bump. Actually, wait. They bump heads, like going in for the kiss,
Yeah.
and then it's like that traditional way doesn't work for them. So then it's like the more perverse, deviant style that they take on with like the.
Also, he like tries to go to the ground, like the movie started, and then eventually they decide that's not comfortable and they go back to the chair. And I'm forgetting some things that happen. Eventually, is the conductor who's like he has a headache or something. He's holding his hands to his forehead, and he stumbles out to where the couple are, and the woman, like consoles him by just starting to kiss him, right? And then the man, who's like obviously feeling jealousy, then just like holds his. And no, he stands up and bumps his head. And so he holds his hands to his head as well, maybe hoping that she would give him the same attention. And she doesn't. And what, does he like storm off? And then she starts sucking the toes of the statue.
Yeah, he gets mad. He gets mad. He walks off.
There were those two quick little...
He didn't seal the deal.
There were like the impotence. There were these two quick little moments. Both were kind of shocking. One was absolutely chilling when they're like caressing each other, and then it's a hand with no fingers like rubbing her face. Maybe it's like they can't connect. I love interpretive stuff like this. Like they can't like really touch or feel each other. They don't connect. And then what was it? He was like covered in blood and like kind of stuttering and repeating himself. Was that in that scene? In the garden?
Yes.
It's like, mon amour, mon amour, mon amour. And he's got like blood on his mouth and his eyes are kind of like fluttering, and here's
the thing that I'm missing that connects to that, I think. There's a phone call. The minister of the interior has called for this guy. And so he goes and he answers the phone, and the minister of interior explains in very vague terms that a lot of innocent women, children, and elderly people have been killed. And it's because of the guy. Like, he must be somehow involved in politics. He made some sort of decision that had these like large scale geopolitical ramifications. And, lots of innocent women, children, elderly people died. And then he just doesn't care about that, puts the phone back down. I think we're supposed to think the Minister of the Interior then commits suicide. And then we see a gun on the ground, and we see his body on the ceiling. And so then dude comes back out, tries to get back into making out with the woman, and she at one point kind of leans back, and her face transforms into another woman's face. I didn't know what to make of that, but then that woman starts talking and says what a joy that we killed our children, or something along these lines. And that's when we see blood across dude's face. So I guess what's being suggested here is that none of the members of the bourgeoisie like don't have blood on their hands, right? Like just by, regardless of whether or not this guy like made the call that led to all these innocent people dying, just the fact that he kind of occupies the position that he occupies in the society is kind of like built on the bodies of other people, countless people.
Mm-hmm.
But he's just trying to get his rocks off.
He's like, I got other stuff to deal with.
Any of that.
Yeah. Yeah, because then after he can't seal the deal, he like runs back in the house and just starts chucking stuff out the window,
including a burning tree, a clergyman, a giraffe, and handfuls of feathers. And then we get this very long like title sequence that I think is basically describing the plot of Solo.
Yeah,
it is.
Okay.
It is.
Yeah,
I'm glad that worked its way back into the podcast.
I get a lot of Shallow vibes from this.
Yeah.
So I guess that's why Marquis de Sade is credited as a writer. Is that it's telling his story.
Like I was reading, and like the last sequence is, it's not Jesus, but it's Jesus.
It's Jesus.
And it's showing like the end of Sallow when like they're leaving the orgy house.
Mm-hmm.
But then they turn around because it's like one is left. Like
I guess it's Jesus and the three wise men, and then they like, then the woman like comes out, and Jesus is like, no, go back in the orgy house. And then
I'm not done. I missed one.
He's like, no, go back in there. And then he comes out without a beard. He just shaved,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then it has the cross with the scalp, with like the women's scalps.
Oof.
Yeah, so interesting that Dali would later become a fascist or dabble in fascism. If this movie is like trying to equate the bourgeoisie and historical atrocities committed by fascists.
Yeah.
So
I liked it.
I liked it too. I had a lot of fun with this movie.
It was a hoot.
And like I think that I think it's such a great like example of how Buñuel like handles themes like this in such a like with such a unique sense of humor. I think that it being the story of Salo at the end is a great point of comparison, because that movie is obviously making a very full-throated anti-fascist argument, but it's doing so in like this very literal, very severe, very brutal experience. And Buñuel is trying to make a similar point, but he makes it kind of like whimsically. He's doing it in this free associative way that I think he's one of the big names of film surrealism, but it's not necessarily what most people would associate with surrealism. I think like Dali is definitely where a lot of people's minds go to, like melting clocks and giant nonsensically large elephants and things like that. Mm-hmm. It's everything just like this swirling psychedelia. But in Buñuel, the surrealism is more about like the lack of cohesion between the elements, right? Like we go from Scorpion documentary to people arriving by boat to et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like he's kind of leaving it to the audience to connect the dots between these things, that many of which like on their own don't look all that supernatural or surreal, but that's kind of how our minds like work in dreams too. Like you're not always like flying and seeing like the cosmos or whatever. It's just a lot of kind of mundane things from real life stripped of context and like smashed into each other.
Yeah. The movie, the vignettes are a lot of, wait, how did we get here again?
Yeah.
Well.
But and like I think especially like the conversation between the woman and her mother, they just sort of say some nonsense. She's talking about 12 players. The priest, he plays just as fine. And she says, "Get ready, the Majorcans are ready." And it's not until later that scene is given any real context with like the musicians playing in the garden. So everything's just completely abstracted of its meaning. This also, I just wanted to say, did this feel like a silent movie to you? Like, I know that this this is a silent movie. Like,
I was really taken aback when there were subtitles on screen and people talking, because there's very few moments of that actually.
Yeah. Did y'all watch the like English subtitled, you think, cut on YouTube?
I checked it out from the library.
I watched it on Canopy.
Yeah.
And hey. But if this had subtitles for some of it, but other things didn't, like the priests or the clergymen, they're droning on, that had no subtitles, that was just sound. The like words that the official who presides over the rock or like the square speaks, those didn't have subtitles. That got the feeling that wasn't like a real language. And like any of the sound just felt like punctuation in the silence, like the gunshots, the screams, the repeating these words over and over. Like these words have no meaning. This is like the most silent. This is the most like silent talking film ever I've seen so far, and it almost felt like a rejection of talking films at this point. I mean, this is the 30s, and
what's the timeline there? Like, at what point do films kind of as a baseline are all talkies? Because I know Chaplin was still doing some silent stuff in the 30s as well.
You probably have a little. You probably have a little while because it's not in Hollywood. I don't know. I don't know when talkies hit like Europe. Can you imagine being the people who were like, I really liked y'all's first movie, Louis Buñuel, Salvador Dali. If we give you money, can you make another one? And they just crank this thing out, and you're just like,
I mean, if you watched Lucy and Andalou and decided to give them money to make a feature, you know it's gonna look like this. You know that's what it's gonna be.
I just like they're just like, but it's just like, what did you think they were gonna do? What about these boys did you think? Oh, they're just gonna make like a normal little nice movie. little straight narrative about a man and woman finding love. No, you're gonna have a movie that was censored for decades.
What do you think the American audience did when they saw it?
Did they get to see it?
Well,
it premiered at the Roxy. That's what he said.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Premiered at the Roxy, but that was, well, what did I say again? Was that 79? Yeah, 79. So, and it's in California. Like they were probably stoned out of their minds. Yeah, they're like, oh yeah. This is film.
Masons out there.
Any final thoughts on L'Age d'Or before we wrap up?
I want to just say that if people watched this or didn't watch this, but it sounds interesting, you should watch it. You should also watch more movies by Louis Buñuel. Fantastic filmmaker. The first one I saw was The Exterminating Angel, which is about a very fancy party like the one that we see here. But for some reason, the party guests like are incapable of leaving the room, and they just like go slowly insane about that fact. Also, The Discreet Charm and the Bourgeoisie is great. Also about a bunch of fancy rich people who are like incapable of sitting down and having a meal with one another. And there's like layers upon layers of dreams that like that movie is kind of like nesting its narrative in. I think my favorite of his is probably Belle de Jour, which Grace, I think that you would probably enjoy a lot. It stars Catherine Deneuve as a woman who I think leaves her husband to become a sex worker, like just wants to be one. And the surrealist elements of that movie are just like these brief flashes of her sexual fantasies. And it's kind of like making a, for its time, very radical argument about why some people might actually want to be in sex work. Like it is not a movie that is anti-sex work in any way, really. Though, I mean, it's really handling it in a complex way, but
yeah, I feel like you would really like that one, Grace. It's also just like a luscious, like you got Catherine Deneuve. It's in like, I think it's set in like Paris. Like it's just like a lush ass movie.
Very
beautiful colors.
Yes.
Yeah. Amazing movie. I also want to suggest people Google Max Ernst, who I noticed showed up in the cast list of this movie. He has a very small role, but he's another surrealist working in painting primarily. But I know him from this book that he wrote called A Week of Kindness, which is just like a bunch of illustrations of these like bizarre human animal hybrids doing terrible things to each other. And they're often like dressed in, very fancy bourgeois regalia. And it feels very similar to me to what this movie is doing, of like kind of equating humans and animals, like asking us to think about what kind of things humans do that we call civilized, but are actually kind of like hiding brutality because it's kind of dressed up by class. Would be worth just kind of like looking through the Google images of A Week of Kindness by Max Ernst. Really, really evocative stuff.
Grace is doing that right now.
Mm-hmm. It rules.
I'm looking right now. I'm watching the Catherine Deneuve one. Actually, I stopped listening.
Hell yeah!
No,
it's a good movie.
This movie's great if you love to interpret your dreams, and if you want to have a very strong reaction, then this is definitely one for you.
Yeah, it's an hour. It's a trip. There's a cow in it, and he drop kicks a blind person to take their taxi. What else do you want in a movie? All right. Well, that will wrap up this episode of Cinematary. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Cinematary, on Twitter and Instagram at @Cinematary, and on Letterboxd at letterboxd.com/Cinematary, where we list the movies that we talked about in this episode. If you would like to support the show, patreon.com/Cinematary. We appreciate any and all patronage you can supply. Thank you to our patrons, Cam, Ron Hayes, Trainer Huskins, Teresa Marsathi, and Tyler Chandler. We thank you very much for supporting the show. Next week is one it was one that was on the list for a number of years, but kept kind of losing out, and I'm very excited to talk about it critically, and that is Pinocchio.
Yeah, I'm so excited to watch this. I haven't seen this since I was a kid.
Yeah,
but I believe Michael O'Malley when he says it's maybe the best Disney animated feature.
So really excited to kind of dip into that one. That'll be our next episode. But be sure to, if you have not listened to Phantom Carriage, the Young Critics series, always a good Phantom Carriage. Both Phantom Carriage and La Age d'Or are available, have pretty good cuts of them on the Internet Archive /YouTube, and then I guess Canopy and the local library. And then Pinocchio, I guarantee somebody who has Disney Plus, so just ask them.
Calling all Disney adults. We got an episode for you.
Or parents.
Yeah. But until then, thank you all for listening, and we will see you in the next episode.
Bye.